As a lot of you guys remember, the Boston Celtics had this brief rebuild turnaround period at the end of that Paul Pierce, KG era. They completely fleeced the Brooklyn Nets. As we all remember, Danny Ainge masterclass. They get the picks that they would use. Number 3 in 2016 and 17 on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Back when they stunk for a brief period, they get Marcus Smart at 6th in 2014. And this is a guy that incrementally improved and ingrained himself in that Boston Celtics culture and vice versa. His name just synonymous with Boston in my mind, and that is why this trade was such a shock for me. If you were ever going to get rid of this man, it felt like you would have to do it in exchange for a real star player. And no disrespect to Kristaps Porzingis, but he's not exactly what I had in mind as the guy that you were going to give up one of your core pieces for, because maybe he isn't Jaylen Brown and he's obviously not Jason Tatum, but as far as importance to this franchise, to the culture of this team, and to the performance of this team over the years, he's the third guy. Maybe this team was so deep last year and they had built this team so well that he doesn't matter as much because they have Derek White and Malcolm Brogdon at that guard spot now, because Al Horford and Robert Williams are such effective front court defensive players. This is such a deep team, which means the value of a player like Marcus Smart, maybe in the eyes of the Boston Celtics, is just not as great as it would be to other teams. Obviously, every other team in the league would love to have a guy like this. Personally, my thoughts on Marcus Smart, I really do admire the level of grit, the level of toughness, just the idea that you will die on the court and play until you are exhausted, play through any sort of injury. I can't help but appreciate that. I don't like the way this guy plays basketball. This isn't about me, but personally, kind of a dirty player, definitely the best actor in the league. He can convince you that he got hit by a truck when he barely got breathed on. I've seen it more times than I would have liked to, but all that aside, this is a player that I felt like was a lifer, and he brought a culture to this team as a locker room guy, set the tone player on the court. He's 1 year removed from a Defensive Player of the Year trophy and a key component in each Celtics playoff run so far. He simply embodies the word toughness. I know he was somewhat a polarizing figure among a lot of Celtics fans for a long time. Of course, over the years, his shot selection, it was definitely a problem at points. It's gotten a lot better. I really don't think it is the problem at this point with the Boston Celtics. Like, they want to address something. Why can't we get over the hump? Why do we keep falling short? Our team surely is good enough to win a championship. I've talked about the Celtics a lot and detailed the reasons, why this team has not won a championship, why they're not ready yet, why they just couldn't get it done. And Marcus Smart is never the reason why that is. It's not like he's the guy that you had to get rid of to put you over the top. If anything, he powered this team to get them to those places. And he is a reason why they get so deep into the postseason year in and year out. He has established himself as a playoff riser, a guy that you want on your team in big games and hate to play against. And I always think of that Game 3 in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. This guy gets hurt and it feels like there's no way he's limited to the locker room. He's on one leg. He's not coming back. He makes that triumphant return. And moments like this, the guy just has that extra gear. He can power through anything. And that is an inspiring quality in a person, in a basketball player. And his intangible value can't be measured by a bunch of numbers. I mean, he helps your team win big basketball games. And so despite a general defensive regression last season, he wasn't the same defender. Marcus Smart was not the reason this team couldn't get over the hump. And I honestly don't understand why this is the player the Celtics would decide to part with. Now, Kristaps Porzingis, obviously, he is a rare type of player that can bring a lot to this team in particular, but to any team. Not a lot of teams have the luxury of having just an absolute sniper at that 5 position and then also block shots on the other end. It's not like this team needs more rebounders, but having an extra big man, I mean, that was always one of the big concerns with this team to me, was the big man depth. Al Horford doesn't have to play 40 minutes in the playoffs anymore. He's obviously not your best option to be starting and finishing every single game. If you have more options at that 5 or 4 position, it makes things a lot easier. Robert Williams, they would love to have him out there, but the guy just can't stay on the court. So just having another body and just contributor in general, even if Kristaps has his injury history and concerns, obviously that can't hurt. But this man has never made it out of the first round of the playoffs. That level of game intensity, it's not something he has experienced. The offensive firepower on this team, it could be absolutely insane. And like I said before, you add another shot blocker, but Marcus Smart, he's not really replaceable from a toughness standpoint, from a team identity, character standpoint. Who's going to be that guy? Who's going to be the vocal leader on this team now? And so one of the silver linings for this trade, because I do think it's a bad trade for Boston. I don't like this trade for Boston, but if I do like something about it, it's that they move their roster around in a sensible way that addresses their depth concerns. For example, you had 3 pretty similar position players with Brogdon, Smart, Derek White, like versatile combo guards that can do a lot of things, but do you need all 3 of those guys? Like, you'd want to play those guys more, and if anything, they did need more size, more depth at that center position. That's exactly what they got. They still don't have that pure point guard, not saying that was Marcus Smart, but he was the best passer on this team. I love Derek White, just in general as a basketball player, and he's going to play more, and he's going to have more usage. He's going to be relied on for defense to a greater degree. And the offense of this team, like I said, at full strength, it could be devastating. But when you get into the big games, when you need to inspire a team, when you need to get fired up, bounce back, and really play those toughest minutes of the year, Marcus Smart is like the guy you want on your team. Marcus Smart is like the guy you don't want to play against. Even if he's not putting up a ton of points, he fires his team up. He has a quality about him that you just like in that do or die scenario, and this does not help the Boston Celtics. Now, let's talk about this from a Grizzlies perspective. I do think it's the most interesting. Like, the Celtics would do this. They would trade Marcus Smart away. Let's talk about this from the Grizzlies perspective for a second before we wrap this up. Marcus can fit like a glove, not only in the rotation here, but especially in the Memphis culture, considering that they need desperately a commanding locker room voice, personality, a veteran, someone that the young guys will listen to, will rally around, will understand the way this man plays basketball, that show improved toughness. It's so important for a young team with so much talent. And Marcus, he can play a ton of different positions, so it doesn't really matter. I've seen this man guard Joel Embiid. He can take Dillon Brooks' spot, assuming he doesn't come back, or if he comes back or not. He will fit like a glove. He's perfect for the culture of this team, which is a place that this team can really take a step. Now, losing Tyus Jones, yes, not ideal. It does hurt the bench, but having Marcus to run offense when Ja's off the court, especially when he's missing those games at the beginning of the season, the Grizzlies already have great depth. It's not like they need bodies. They have plenty of guys like last year that weren't even in the rotation at the end of the year because they have so many players. So that's not a place that they really take a hit. I love this for Memphis. I hate it for Boston. So that's going to do it.